Welcome back to A&A. Today we have another fuel pump to install on a Nissan Sentra. On the Toyota Corolla that we installed, that fuel pump wasn't putting out enough pressure to keep the engine running. It would stall at a stop sign occasionally. This Nissan Sentra will run great while it's driving on the road. When you turn the engine off and try to restart a few minutes later, it's very difficult to get it started if you don't give the fuel pump enough time to prime up. So the problem with this one is once you shut it off, the fuel pressure regulator on the pump is not holding pressure. It's not maintaining the pressure like it's supposed to. And what we're going to do is we'll put a fuel pressure gauge on it. We'll let you see it running, which has got about 50 psi while it's running, which is awesome. But as soon as you turn the engine off, the pressure bleeds off almost immediately. So given the car has well over 200,000 miles, we're going to go to the trouble of pulling the pump out. We're not just going to replace the little pressure regulator, we're going to replace the whole pump assembly. Given that for the Nissan Sentra, it's a little over $100 for a Carter pump. So that's what we've chosen to do to give dependability back to the car. So let's put the fuel pressure gauge on it and let you see what it's doing. Okay, this is kind of an odd angle because the way I'm having to connect the gauge and trying to get you guys set up so that you can watch the gauge for me. Now, first, let's just try to turn the key on and watch the pressure as the pump primes, see what we get. Okay, if you'll see, it went up and now it's falling again. That's the pressure regulator not doing its job. So let's go ahead and start the car. And although you can't see it clearly, here's 40, the next mark is 50. We should reach 50 psi. And then I'm gonna shut the car off and I want you to watch how quick it drops. See how quick that pressure's falling? That's that again is the pressure regulator. So the regulator's bad. The pump itself is probably good, but I was mistaken about the mileage. This has well over 300,000 miles. So we don't want her to break down on the side of the highway, especially since it's my wife's aunt. So we're going to do her right. We're going to put a good quality complete fuel pump assembly. Then we're going to check the pressures again. So like the Toyota Corolla, thank you Nissan, they have an access panel up under the rear seat, so there's no drop in the tank or anything like that. Let me take you in there and show you that. This should look familiar if you watched the Corolla video. You've got 3 plastic tabs that you need to turn in order to get this metal plate off. You just turn them 90 degrees. It's got a screwdriver, Phillips slot in it, but I tried that on one and the plastic's old, I guess, and it kind of rounded off, but it's no problem. You just take a pair of pliers or whatever and you can turn those pretty easily. So first thing that we do, of course, I didn't show you unhooking the negative battery cable. Make sure you get that unhooked. We don't need any sparks when you're messing around with the fuel tank. So we're just going to lay that to the side. It's pretty nasty in here. I'm going to get a brush. I'm going to loosen some of this stuff up and get the vacuum and vacuum it. We don't want any debris falling down in there clogging up our new pump. So I do that. Once you get your get the top of this fuel pump cleaned off really well. You've got, of course, one electrical connector that we unplugged, and we got one fuel connection. And you just press these two little plastic ears together, and it'll slip off. What you may have to do is get some little small needle nose pliers, because if you're like me, I can't get my fingers in this tiny spot to mash those tabs together. But once you get them mashed together, that fuel line starts coming off. There we go. So now that's off. Let's just kind of leave it hanging right there. Now, I would normally say be very careful when you take this off. The fuel will be under pressure and it will spray, but we've got a bad fuel pump and it won't hold pressure. So anyway, I guess you should always take that off slowly, just in case. These are 8mm bolts. Screws, whatever. The new fuel pump did come with a new one of these rings right here. Didn't come with the new screws though, so you'll want to hang on to those. Fuel tank. And these screws are pretty small, so be careful or you will lose those somewhere. Alright, you saw the pump kind of spring up. So now all we need to do, move our fuel line out of the way and gently work the old one out. You'll have the float, which operates your fuel gauge. It always hangs up. Given we're replacing this, there's no need to be gentle, but just try and let as much of this fuel that'll drip back into the tank as you can before you try and make it out of the car with it. The less fuel spilt inside the car, the better. Is that right, Aunt Mary? On the new pump, you will have to reuse the little plastic connector here. It's what grabs the other end of your fuel line. The new one don't come with that, so you will have to reuse that. Pay attention to the orientation, the way the old one was in. This points this way to connect to your fuel line. Then your electrical connector is over here, just like the original. I'm gonna slip this in, and then I'm gonna go get the new metal ring that came with the new pump. Well, I'm getting ahead of myself because the new pump also came with a new O-ring, which needs to be replaced, and so we'll just slip that over there. All right, be right back. All right, you slip the new one, and there's a groove down here that your new O-ring goes in. Perfect. Pull your fuel line back out of the way. Put your fuel pump back in there. Of course, it's going to sit on the bottom. You know, you remember the other one sprung up when we took them bolts off, so it's supposed to do that. Got this fancy new ring we're going to install, and we're going to use the original bolts. See if we can't get one on opposite sides, and that'll hold it for us. And if you drop your socket, you're in trouble. got one on each side, and that's holding the fuel pump down so that I can get these others started. Alright, once you get them all started, let's go ahead and start taking them down. I don't know what the spec is on these. If you saw when we took them off, they weren't tight hardly at all. So there's an O-ring under there. Of course, we want to get that sealed properly. Don't tighten one bolt all the way and then go in sequence, you know. Skip every other one. Tighten them down, you know, a little at a time. Make sure it all goes down evenly. And just make sure they're all tight. Alright, once you got everything tight, and I mean, you can still turn it. You don't want to strip them out. So as long as they're good and snug all the way around, you're good. Gonna reconnect our fuel line. The ears have to be turned that way in order to, and you'll tell once you get into it, in order for that nice snap there. All right, we're going to put our electrical connector. Now, of course, to button it up completely, we would go ahead and get all this attached, rear seat back and all that. However, let's test it. Let's look back at our fuel gauge. Let's see what the pressure's doing now. All right, so got you back under the hood here. You watch that gauge. We should get a good 50 psi while it's running, even if it's 40. I mean, 40 to 50, that's great. What we don't want is that instantaneous bleed down of the pressure. So you watch it, I'll crank it. Okay, we got really good pressure. We got 55 psi. That's great. Now let's watch what it does when I shut the engine off. See that pressure? It's holding it just below 50. That fuel pressure is holding steady. Now, if we just let it sit, I mean, it will eventually bleed down. Okay, it's been several minutes now, and we're still holding above 45 psi. So I'm going to call this a successful repair. If you're having issues with the hard starts, you might want to try cycling the key to run a couple of times. Don't actually start the engine. Just cycle it, you know, to where all your gauge lights come on. Do that a couple of times. What that'll do is that'll force your fuel pump to come on to reach pressure, and then it'll turn off. Do that 2 or 3 times, and then try to actually start the vehicle. If it'll start then, after cycling, making the fuel pump run a couple times, you have a fuel pump issue. If you're checking the car while it's running and you have good pressure, you could still have a fuel pressure regulator issue. These cars, the fuel pressure regulator is built into the actual fuel pump assembly. There's not one under the hood. Some vehicles do have a fuel pressure regulator under the hood, on the fuel rail, or somewhere near the fuel rail. So I hope this helped you. Hope you got something you could use from it. If you like this kind of stuff, if you don't mind, please subscribe. Give us a thumbs up if you like the video. Hope y'all guys have a good day. Remember, above all, be kind to one another. See you next time.